Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the All Things Business Guy podcast. My name is Daniel Akert, and I'm the founder as well of this podcast, but also Team App and the Trusted Sales Academy, which are two companies of mine as well. But the whole purpose of this podcast, if you haven't watched us before, is that we are really opening the discussion about this problem in the world, which is that over 70% of people hate what they do. They hate their jobs every day, and this is a proven statistic. And also, what we also know is that over 60% of students change career paths in their first year of going to college. And this is a real problem in the world because, people are kind of like trying to work things out, but they're not actually using any tools or have any recommendations that they can do to really make better life choices. So thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share this with your community. And there may be some great tips and tricks that come out of this one that would really help someone to change their life or make better choices. So I've got the wonderful Hannelie Du Preez here today. She is my guest. Industrial psychologist, really experienced in coaching, really experienced in business, worked with thousands of students and and career professionals in building their businesses. And but Hannelie, like in a brilliant way, tell me all about you. What do you specialize in, and what do you do?
Thank you, Dan. Really nice to be with you today on this podcast. So I'm actually a behavioral scientist with a background of organizational psychology, but also social work. And I'm working with people for the past 30 years, from age 13 up till executive level. And my whole interest started working in corporates and realizing how unhappy people are. When I start doing the executive coaching, many of them say, I come to work to earn a salary, but I actually, hate coming here. And if we understand the role leaders play in creating an optimized work environment, if they're not happy, how can the people be happy?
Mm.
And therefore, my business, Symmetry, stands for the systemic mobilization of people and organizational growth, because so many times we go to the symptom and not the root cause. And therefore, I started looking into the root cause of why people hate their jobs so much. What went wrong? And how can we prevent it in a proactive way?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting because you've seen a lot of focus in the world on just putting plaster over the wounds, right? I mean, this is the whole concept, and if you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, how they do this, they do 4-day work weeks, they do employee benefits, and have subscribe to this app and get this included, whatever it is as part of this, and it's all. I just see this as a way that companies are trying to bribe their employees to stay and to work, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. So it's going to solve it maybe short term, but it's still going to be a long-term problem that needs to still be solved, in the world. So what have you seen with some of the clients you've been working with that are, some examples of this, and kind of what have you done about it?
Dan, it makes me think when listening to you of the two, like Maslow and Hertzberg, that say that the basic needs are actually more the hygienic factors. So in the absence of it, it demotivates. But if it's there, it does not motivate. So if we go, and most people are familiar with Maslow, to the higher levels of the needs hierarchy, we'd see sense of belonging and self-actualization is actually the things that motivates people. Now, if I don't feel I'm actualizing and I'm actually living for a purpose and I'm making a difference and I'm enjoy what I'm doing, how can I actualize? And therefore, how can I be motivated? So the whole cycle of people not doing what they love, and I call it working in their sweet spot, they may be good in what they do, but they don't like it. So it takes their energy. It doesn't give them energy. First, identify that that is the problem and one of the root causes why organizations struggle with employee engagement. Then we can start saying, okay, but what can we do? And how do we help people who already is facing this dilemma when they're in their late 30s, mid 40s to transition, so that they can spend their latter part of their career enjoy what they do. I always say, if it's fun to work, it's work, no, sorry, I got it wrong. When it's fun, it's fun to work, and people underestimate the importance of that. They think, if I do a job and I can do it well, I will perform well. But actually, it doesn't work like that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, where does money become the motivating factor? Probably in the last day of the month and the first day, not even the first day of the month. I mean, probably the day that you're getting your salary is the day that you're most happier and most motivated, if that's your driving factor. But I find it very interesting what you're saying, because you're saying that, there are other elements that are influencing the way that people are, performing. And a lot of conversations that I've been having, that have been coming up, have been talking about the first stage in being, aware or creating awareness. And what's interesting is that you're approaching this more from the, from the business perspective and the leader's perspective, of what they can do to create better environments. Like what tools are you currently using at the moment that are, how can I say, like helping you to help leaders and businesses to really improve themselves?
Sure, there are a couple, and it also depends on the organization and the type of industry, because I'm not even a cookie recipe. But what I found that because I started working in the organization, I then started moving into the execs that I'm coaching, asking me to work with their children that's on university, and they can't find direction. And then realizing that, where they find their career guidance from is actually from their parents. And I'm a parent myself, you have lived life and I want to have a better life for my child, and many times we think it's the financial rewards or the salary that's going to give your kid a better quality of life, which is true. But actually, the financial result is the cause of me doing what I'm best at and what I like doing. Not only what I'm best at, because when I can do something that I'm good at, but I'm so bored. And I don't know if you know that boredom is also a type of stress.
Mm. Mm. Well, so what you're saying is that now we are identifying that the reason that people have a problem at work is because when they were younger, they went into the wrong career choice or the wrong path or the wrong type of companies because they were chasing, money instead of chasing what they're good at. And what we know is that when you do something that you enjoy and you love and you're good at it, you get to earn money anyway. It just gets to a point that, of understanding the value. So it's more important, instead of teaching kids to like find a career, is to teach them how to really harness what they're really good at, and then increase the value of that so that they can earn what they're worth in that space.
You see, and the challenge that I'm finding when I'm working with students is that their interests and their aptitude in many instances are quite dispersed. Okay. So then I started asking myself, okay, but why is this? And then when I did some more research, I came to the conclusion that we are actually very reactive in one of the most important areas of an individual's life, which is your career. I mean, we spend like most of our time at work and then go home not feeling happy or fulfilled. We feel frustrated. It puts strain on our personal relationships, and so the vicious cycle goes. When children age 13 to 14, they usually continue with their mural activities that they started when they were younger. And they're good at it and they enjoy it because that's what they know. But that's actually a very pivotal and critical time in a child's life, because when parents can then understand what your child's aptitude is, as well as their interest, and expose them to mural activities that's in line with their aptitude, I find that when they're in grade 11 or high school, when they have to choose their careers, there's a closer alignment between their interest and their aptitude. And also a bigger sense of purpose in terms of doing some subjects that's actually boring, but they have to do it. But because it makes sense, they have the intense pursuit to persist with it, and therefore then complete the college or the graduate studies successfully.
I mean, even for me, when I was at school, you know, I remember two specific subjects like this, two contrasting subjects, one being English and the other being, you know, technical drawing or architecture in that sense. And, you know, on the English side, like, I just did not enjoy it. I don't enjoy reading English. I don't enjoy learning about it. I don't enjoy it at all. Do I love history? Absolutely. I find it fascinating because I love to understand, you know, what happened to what is the result today. You know, what has the journey been? What actually was the cause of it? So this kind of, I think, links back to this whole thought process about really understanding the root causes of things, because people really tend to overlook this. And why do you think that people overlook the root causes? Is it because it's easier? Do you think it's because people are just brushing it under the carpet? Like, why are people really just trying to put plasters over, you know, wounds, as opposed to really trying to identify what the root problems are?
You see, Dan, when I think about it, it's about, for your reasoning, it doesn't make logic sense because you have to go and scratch a little bit deeper. You know,
it's harder, right? Makes sense. That's a simple answer right there, right? It's just that people don't do it because it takes time, it takes work, and takes effort. But this is the problem: is that they're going to end up going through that discovery later in life anyway, because they're going to have a midlife crisis. You know, I say they, but that's the general consensus: is that, you know, people will go through a midlife crisis when their body, their emotions, you know, everything just can't take it anymore. They can't actually force themselves to move forward because they're doing everything that's against their natural flow and against their natural, you know, being.
Burnout, you know, so it's like people think it's like I work so hard and that I get burnout, but they underestimate the emotional load that actually is a bigger cause in burnout because they're not in the job that gives them energy. You know, I also like when I work with students, the first and the second year, you know, you can't believe the relief of that young adult. I mean, I can see it on their face, you know, they're like, that's what's wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to go for therapy. You know, it's like, because they start doubting their own, who they are, their own confidence, and the parents' financial impact on redoing studies or changing career choices or degrees. It's like, it becomes such a like painful experience to everybody.
I suppose we did, you know, we did a webinar a couple months ago, which was for parents, and the concept behind the webinar was about educating parents that there's a better way that they can help their kids to make better life choices, so that they go through life living a more fulfilling life, happier life, better, you know, better results. And I guess, when we asked parents at the registration, we asked them obviously a question, and the question was really about like, what worries you most about your child's future? And the consensus or the most answers were very, very much the same, which was, I want my child to be happy, but I also want them to earn a living. And so there's definitely a misconception between enjoying what you do and earning your worth. Like, how do you approach that when you're having that conversation with a student? And obviously they have to go through this whole personal discovery side, but how do you approach that? And what's your kind of recommendations or tips?
So for me, I would say that I still need to see the person who does not enjoy what they're doing being the best version of themselves. So if we understand a little bit of the neuroscience, that if I'm in an environment that creates stress for me, functioning optimally, I can't solve problems optimally. So I'm actually a 60 or 70% version of myself. So if my colleague is the 100% version of him or herself versus my 70% of myself, who is going to come up at the top?
They're going to
so it's not just like, you go and do this, because those professions earns a lot of money. In any profession, you've got your high earners, you've got your low earners, and you've got your people that's just not making it. Why is that? If passion and finding your sweet spot don't play a role.
So what can business owners do right now? So we're having this conversation. Obviously, some people are going to be listening and going, are my team happy? Are they, who's at 70%? Who's at 100%? Like how do they become more aware of this in their teams, and how can they start to, put steps in place to move forward?
I want to start by saying in every job, there's a part that's not enjoyable. Okay. So we also need to learn how to deal with a little bit of monotonous work, a little bit of boredom and those type of things, but it can't be the majority. So we can't outsource everything to the organization. But what definitely plays a role is that organizations can make sure that they've got a very good selection process. And not only assess the individual to see if the individual has all the qualities, but also understand the requirements of the behavioral competencies of the role and the person, behavioral competencies, personality with the behavioral requirements of the role. Because, IQ is the door opener. EQ is what makes people success in their role. Because
so what's the difference between IQ and EQ?
So IQ is more your ability and your attitude and your intellect, the academia performance. But the EQ is our ability to work within a system, and an organization is a system, with teamwork, dealing with conflict, having good interpersonal relationships, having an understanding of my own self-awareness and the impact of, what my awareness and my behavior has on other people, as well as how to regulate. If I'm feeling upset, I can't throw a tantrum because I don't get my way in the workplace. So those elements are very, very important. And, with the career guide assessment that we're doing, we actually identify those elements when child is in grade 11 or late high school, and help them to understand what's the intense pursuit, so that they don't jump from one job to another opportunity because they can't push through. I see a tendency of low resilience lately because of the immediate need of gratification. Everything is available by a press of a button. So our kids don't learn how to wait anymore.
This is this point about, there's also an effect that social media has in this, right? Because social media makes it okay to put your energy out there without repercussion. And what's been happening recently is seeing a lot of people becoming, being trolled or whatever it is because of that behavior. And I guess that, it's tolerable that that's happening, but in organizations, it's not tolerable. You can't put your energy onto other people and then expect nothing back. You go to HR, you get in trouble, you get warnings, whatever it is. But social media makes it, easier for anybody to put that energy on other people and really kind of say, like, not worry about repercussion, even though they don't expect it, but sometimes it really does have a huge detrimental effect on that individual once they become a target from the outside kind of world. But I want to talk about your assessment. So I find this very fascinating. So you cover 5 different areas. I know this, right? So you do orientation style, interest, personality style, aptitude, and emotional quotient, or EQ, that we were discussing. I think the biggest thing which I find really, really amazing about this is that most personality profiling tests and traditional career guidance assessments, they only focus on 3 of these. But you spent 20 years building this tool where parents can get their kids to go through this assessment. It takes, I believe, an hour and a half to do it. It can be start and stopped. And once you have the result of that assessment, it really tells you as a not just a parent, but also the student, gives them really clear guidance and advice on what kind of general direction they should head into. And I suppose the best part about that is, as things in the world become faster, simpler, easier, automated with AI, etc., like, humans are being left behind in this space. But in understanding the general kind of direction that people can go into, where it's going to be their natural flow or their best kind of space, it allows them to be adaptable and allows them to be able to fit in with organizational change as they go forward. Like, tell me a bit more about this tool, why you would say absolutely parents should be doing this with their kids.
Yeah, Dan, so what I've realized with the traditional assessments, which I've also done before I realized that there are a gap there's something missing. We all know that interest and aptitude or talent plays a role, all right? But the whole energy part, that what gets me out of bed, is missing. I can give you a lot of examples of students that chose a direction because of interest, but there's no energy. But the energy they get them from knowledge. So they like the subject, like psychology, but they've got no interest in human beings, So they can't become a psychologist, and then they do, and then they're not happy, and they don't understand why. Yeah. Okay. So that's the one part. The other part is, what makes me successful is elements in terms of my personality. If I've got an external locus of control, I know that I need to put some short deadlines, and I need to put my goals down. A person with the internal locus of control regenerate the energy, and the motivation comes from in. Okay, so I get a better self-insight. If I understand that my perseverance is a bit low and I struggle with the subject, I've got at one student, she got the feedback on the Friday she had to study. And the Sunday she got to a point where she felt so frustrated. And then this light goes on to say, but remember, my perseverance is a bit low, so let me just push through.
Yeah.
It's that self-knowledge that this tool gives to the student is so empowering and help them to become much better in self-navigating.
Others have to work it out by themselves. People that don't do these types of assessments, that don't do profiling, but then also don't implement the results, is obviously the key point, is just kind of like wading. I have this vision in my mind of, like, wading through the mud and hoping you're going to find the other side, but all it is really just, kind of like just continuous mud wading, and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and eventually you get to a point where it either raises out or it goes deeper. And there's 2 kind of ways that you can go. But I guess the thought process is, I guess the word that comes to mind is a map, right? Is that we know that when we do orientation practices or whatever, when we're young, very young, you do, you know, this in a practical format, you learn how to create navigation, how to create orientation. That's natural for us. But what makes it so difficult for people to decide to use a tool really that helps them to give the information they can make better decisions? Why do people make it so hard for themselves to actually learn more about themselves and make these decisions?
You see, I think first is maybe the fear, you know, of what I may see about myself. Because, you know, our whole world is so critical and judgmental. You know, we get reprimanded when we do things wrong, but we not necessarily get recognized when we do things right. Okay, so an assessment tool is actually a mirror. And it's not the how can I say, the perception or the fear of I'm not going to like what I'm seeing because of my previous experience that feedback is painful or it's not, it's making me feel unsafe. Therefore, I've got a natural tendency to shy away from looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
But the moment I look in the mirror, I empower myself to actually take control over my future. And just this example that I just mentioned to you now was like this, because the self-awareness helped her with her intense pursuit. No therapy, no long-term whatever, you know, reading lessons, math lessons. Not that I say that that's wrong, but it can actually be so much easier when we see ourselves in the mirror, because we all know the moment I acknowledge something, I'm halfway there. Then the how, it's much easier. The difficult part is to identify the what.
So the first part for you again is awareness, and then acknowledgement, and then from there is action, which is like the next kind of step that people can take. So what would you say to parents right now that are thinking about their kids, thinking about, you know, the concerns that they have about their kids' future? What do you think their kind of next step should be? Like, what should these people be doing? I mean, is it a profile test? Is it, you know, booking a conversation? Is it even just having the conversation with their friends and saying, you know, have you thought about, you know, doing some kind of profiling for your kids or whatever it is? Like, what have you seen as like the kickstart point, like the get it going? What's that for the parents today?
It's first to acknowledging that there is hope.
Okay. Okay, parents, don't worry. There's a way. There's a way that you can help your kids. And it's not by, you know, throwing them into the deep end. It's by putting them in the shallow end first.
And then do the online profiling. You know, we've got a mini assessment that's for free that will give them an indication in terms of the orientation or what gives your child energy. And then from there, you can actually decide if you want to have the full profile. And what's also nice is on the profile, there's some development steps, you know, so it's not only telling you the what, but it's also give you some suggestions of the how.
Mm. Well, the how is the most important part eventually, right? That's like, these are the steps you take. And a lot of the time, you know, we'll see a lot of really interesting information. But what I love about you is that you're very much about implementation, very much about, you know, yes, learn this, but implement it. This is how you do it. This is the best way for you to go and implement it. And so you've put together what you call a career action planning session. So once people do profiling, they can then have a career action planning session one-to-one with an industrial psychologist. They can prepare themselves and their kids with a much more knowledge-based approach to how they choose their career and that going forward. And what about students? What's the guidance like? You know, maybe students are feeling you know, that they will be, can I say, standing out of the crowd because they are now taking more of a self-awareness approach. What would be your advice for kids, for students these days?
what I realized is that the moment one acknowledged to say, I actually realized this about myself, then the rest say, oh, really? I was wondering about that myself too. So it's like it opens up, it creates emotional safety for people to actually talk about where they are at in their career or in their pursuit of becoming a professional in some or other way, So, our brains are very interesting things. We create these horror movies by the stories that we're telling ourselves. And the moment you get to the sort of the reality, we said, oh, it's not so bad. Actually, it's very enlightening, and then that go on that journey. And, for me to see the relief, the lift of depression, the lift of hopelessness, the creating of excitement about their future is just priceless.
And I suppose it's the first opportunity that people have as students to, cut out negativity and negative people, because it's going to happen later in life anyway. What an amazing first step in like going, no, get away, not interested, get away, just focus on themselves. But that's amazing. I mean, Hannelie, thank you, so much for being a part of this conversation today. I'm sure we will have a lot more conversations. Please comment below. Let us know what you think about your child's career. Subscribe, share this with other people who you think could really just, learn from this. And don't forget that one person that watches this, it may change their life. It may give them, something that they can then focus on as an alternative, as a next step to take, because there's always another way, and that is the big learning as well. Hannelie, I want to run one more thing with you, which is I'm doing a bit of a word association game. It's a little bit fun. You don't know the words, and I'm going to throw these at you. So the goal is like 10 seconds, and what I'd like you to do is just kind of shout out the first word that comes to mind. Don't think about it too much. Don't prepare too much, which I know that you love to do as well. So you ready?
I am.
Let's do it as quick as possible. And the first word is growth.
People.
Resilience.
Children.
Mindfulness.
Too
slow. Next one. Reflection.
That's very bad.
Gratitude.
It's a normal person. You see what stress does to us? It makes us stop thinking. This is just like a typical example of what it does.
Thank you for being my live example of how we deal with stress. But Hannelie, it's been amazing to chat to you. I'm really excited about the future of career guidance and starting to work with more and more kids and more students and making better life choices, and stop being influenced from external places and start to work on the inside and the internal. So subscribe, follow, connect with Hannelie or on LinkedIn as well. And we look forward to seeing you in one of our next episodes. Thank you very much, everyone, for following and listening. And please do comment below. We'd love to know what you think. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.